Welcome back to the podcast. My name is R.E. On this episode, another episode in the Law of One series, this one titled Your Consciousness Raising Efforts. And this is a very interesting episode, and the Law of One material I think is a very powerful material for helping you raise your consciousness. And I think that's one of the reasons that we're here, other than to experience life and to love each other and to raise our consciousness. That's what we do on personal development journeys and on our spiritual journeys. And the Law of One material has really helped me raise my consciousness since last summer when I discovered this material. And now that it's my second time around, I think that kind of the exponential growth is going to be even more. So I'm going to share this quote now from R.E. and then analyze it a little. And this quote is from Law of One, Book 1, page 67 to 68. You must understand that the distinction between yourself and others is not visible to us. We do not consider that a separation exists between the consciousness-raising efforts of the distortion which you project as a personality and the distortion that you project as another personality. Thus, to learn is the same as to teach, unless you are not teaching what you are learning, in which case you have done you/them little good. This understanding should be pondered by your mind-body-spirit complex, as it is a distortion which plays a part in your experience at this nexus. And these quotes are absolutely fascinating. It's interesting to see that R.E. sees no distinction between any of us, which I take to mean that we're all one unity, we're all the same one consciousness in different distortions, in different aspects, in different mind-body-spirit complexes. And separation doesn't really exist other than in our minds. We're all interconnected, we're all intertwined through this love, through this light, and we're really all in this together, in this consciousness-raising journey, in this consciousness-raising effort. And it shows that when you raise your consciousness, you're lifting everybody else up. Your efforts really do matter on your consciousness-raising journey. And one thing that used to get me discouraged was that nobody I really knew was into doing any of this work, was into meditation or reading the Law of One or reading any spiritual texts and really going on this consciousness-raising effort. And I didn't really understand this quote at first, and now the second time around, it really shows me that every single person can make a difference on this consciousness-raising journey. It really shows that the little things really do matter. Any single decision you make will either raise your consciousness a little or lower it a little. One example is eating food. You can choose to either raise your consciousness a little by eating, fruits and vegetables, or processed sugary cookies, ice cream. Not to say that those aren't good, but this also shows that any single person can make an impact. Any single person can change the world. You have an effect on the collective consciousness whether you know it or not. You are an important part of this effort. You are a key part of this effort, of this game, of this consciousness-raising game, to raise our vibration, to realize our true self, to realize and come into contact with our higher self. But this consciousness-raising effort is not something that you're going to get credit for. This is not something that people will recognize you for on the most part, unless you're like a saint or just an absolute guru. And nobody's really going to praise you for raising your consciousness. That's not why we do this. That's not why we raise our consciousness. So why do we raise our consciousness? We raise our consciousness to embody our true self, to embody our higher self, to kind of transcend the ego. Maybe not transcend, but I guess that's the ultimate goal, but really to learn who we are and embody it, embody ourselves as stars of love. And another thing I take away from this quote, from this passage, is that to learn is the same as to teach, which is a very interesting concept, and it's one of the distinctions in the Law of One that they say, one of the elementary distinctions. And that's partly why I'm doing this series on the Law of One. I know that if I'm trying to teach this text to others and analyze it, it's going to help me learn it more. It's also me spending more time on this material than I did the first time just doing one read over it. And I also just want to, again, share this message with more people. I think that a lot of people could benefit from coming into contact with this material and studying it a little and seeing how they could use it to help raise their vibration. And another reason I'm doing this podcast, this Law of One series, is to hold myself accountable in my consciousness raising efforts, And I know that I'm more likely to make these courageous decisions, make these consciousness raising decisions, these high vibration decisions, now that I know that what I do really has an impact, because there is no distinction between my consciousness raising efforts and your consciousness raising efforts. There is no distinction between any of that. If anybody is raising their consciousness, it is helping us all raise our consciousness, which is interesting to think about. Maybe this is why there's been such a push to lower people's consciousness through drugs and bad foods and just a lot of the violence and hate and evil we see in society. Again, most of this is unconscious, but your consciousness raising efforts really do matter. Don't think that if nobody around you is into meditation or doing spiritual stuff or raising their vibration, don't think that you're alone, because you are not. There are a ton of us out there, and this is just one way that we can connect, and one way that you can show that we're all in this together, and that everything that you do really does have an impact and really could help the collective consciousness.